Hello Internet, I'm the Disney Brain and welcome to The Top. The last time we talked about Disney Channel original movies, we discussed the best of the best, the truly exceptional films that weren't just intelligent or engaging, but moving and important, the kind of movies Disney Channel should focus more on making today. This time around? Well, the title is kind of self-explanatory. Now, it bears mentioning that these are just the movies I think are the worst. I'm trying to be as objective as possible, but if I end up being wrong about some of my points, I'm open to admitting that and having a constructive conversation about it. As always, share what movies you think should have made the list down below, but let's keep it civilized and respectful. With all that said, let's kick things off with number 5. What a way to kick off the list. It's just so painfully ironic that a movie literally called Genius is one of the dumbest DCOMs ever conceived. The main problem with this film is that it's a character-driven movie with the so-called genius Charlie Boyle at the center of it all. He gets into college at 12, but feels bad because his intelligence keeps him from making friends and fitting in, so he invents this new persona called Chaz, which is just the movie's excuse for turning him into a jerk. The acting job and general depiction of Charlie Boyle as a lead character is terrible here. Everything that defines both him and his alter ego Chaz is done so poorly because it's laced in nothing but cliches on either side. Creating personality duality in movies doesn't function well if the difference isn't nuanced, because you create a situation where both sides of the coin are just disingenuous, overly exaggerated stereotypes. This movie should supposedly value intelligence, but most of the supporting characters treat Charlie so poorly because he's smart. The school he goes to treats their alleged best scientist poorly with his working conditions, which would almost never happen in higher education, and they actually thought it was a good idea to allow a 12-year-old kid to teach a college class. Yeah, this movie is that poorly thought out. What this film is essentially saying is that if you're different because you're smart, you should lower yourself to the standard of everyone else, and that's pure BS. And when Charlie finally does help make that gravitational breakthrough that the scientist character was talking about, they use it to cheat for one thing, and mechanically, their invention is as inconsistent as the app from Zapped. This movie is insulting, overly reliant on cliches, can't do a single thing right mechanically, fails to deliver a competently conceived character for a character-driven narrative, and is boring on top of that. And this is just number 5. Strap in, guys, it only gets worse from here. Now take it easy, Zendaya fans, she's fine in this movie. In fact, Zendaya is never really the problem in anything that she's in, but this movie is awful because it fails on almost every level of narrative, mechanics, and storytelling imaginable, and if you've seen my full DCOM review for it, you know exactly why. The male mind control act is a terrible mechanic that is hilariously inconsistent and inane. But what's worse is the portrayal of both men and women in this film. Even though Zendaya and Chanel Peloso are arguably the best parts of the movie, both of them, in addition to most of the females with lines in this movie, are conceived as overly controlling and selfish, while the men of this film are treated as empty, shallow shells of humanity who don't deserve a will of their own. Lord almighty, this movie is broken in so many ways, in addition to sending such a terrible message that you have to question what was going through the minds of the people that wrote this alarmingly bad script. In addition to all of that, none of the overarching themes that they try to introduce gets enough focus to develop correctly, let alone matter. Themes of family adjustments, power and corruption, amongst a few others, are all handled so poorly. And why the heck is there a fart joke in this movie? Jeez. It's another mechanically broken movie with a poorly conceived smartphone act at the heart of it all, in addition to some of the worst use of minor character cliches in any DCOM, and none of the handful of decent character moments can save it. Now, I can understand why some people might enjoy it anyways, especially if Zendaya is the main reason for said enjoyment, but for me, it just hurt to watch. There's a reason that most movies in general don't have fourth installments, because usually at that point, you're spreading the narrative so thin that ideas become hard to come by and the magic captured by the original, quite literally in this case, is lost to a degree. This film perfectly encapsulates all of that. Instead of being a strong-willed counterforce to Marnie's over-ambitiousness, they have Mama Cromwell selling houses and cheating using her magic, which is a direct contradiction to how she operates in every single movie prior. Debbie Reynolds, who is the lifeblood of this series as Aggie Cromwell, couldn't even be bothered to show up as anything other than a magical hologram. Sophie isn't even in this one, and once again, Dylan gets zero development, as his character somehow becomes even less engaging than in Calabar's Revenge. The concept is nothing but discount Hogwarts, except with no interesting characters and a plotline so basic, so mind-numbingly plain, and so unambitious that you could pretty much guess everything that's going to happen in the movie after 10 minutes. It's nothing but a franchise trying to squeeze another movie out of brand recognition, because the first one was genuinely good. And now I'm genuinely afraid that the upcoming High School Musical 4 might end up sharing that description, which would be an even bigger disappointment, for me at least. And my lord, fake Marnie is terrible in this movie. One of the least natural, least engrossing leading ladies in any DCOM. Kimberly J. Brown understood the character so well. She always struck a good balance of strong-willed, mixed with adventurous, and she always had you believing that she could do enough to save the day. But Sarah Paxton doesn't deliver any of that, and what's worse is how the other actors who already know Marnie from previous movies have no chemistry with fake Marnie because, well, how could they? This is especially true with Lucas Grabeel as Chad here, because their interactions are so awkward and so forced that I start feeling bad for Lucas. His chemistry with Kimberly J. Brown wasn't perfect, but it was there, and this movie takes a huge step backwards because they couldn't get their leading lady back, which should have been a red flag going into this film. There's almost nothing to say about the plot other than the fact that there is some semblance of one, albeit a very contrived one, but at the end of the day, this movie should have never been made because it does nothing to advance any characters or any relevant plot details from the previous 3 movies. A lot of this could have been forgiven and maybe even salvaged to some degree if the real Marnie were here to anchor some of the more mundane aspects, but unfortunately, we'll never see that version of this movie. Talk about a soul-sucking movie to sit through. I made the huge mistake of watching this movie out of sheer curiosity. I've seen almost every superhero movie there is, and wanted to know why so many people rated a movie about superheroes so lowly, and by God did I get my answer. You know all those diverse and colorful heroes they show throughout the film? Nothing but glorified cameos and costumes there for absolutely no reason other than to tease at the fact that this world of theirs happens to have a bunch of apparently useless heroes. In addition, the entire plot revolves around Scott Marshall, who comes from a family of superheroes, but he doesn't have his powers yet. And if you're already thinking, hey, this is the plot of a much better movie, then you're right on track. Though technically Sky High took that plotline from this movie since it was released later, but they did do it better. This movie does absolutely nothing interesting with its characters, and even less with the lead character. They even throw in the ever-annoying liar revealed cliche to add to their obnoxious use of snore-inducing plot points. The villains in this movie are just as bad, nothing but obnoxious corporate hacks trying to make a quick buck. Now, this movie was bad after about an hour or so, but it was mainly just boring and completely void of ambition. But then, they get to the climax, which is literally Scott kicking a soccer ball. And that's it! My God, it's beyond insulting, it's beyond frustrating, it's beyond a cheap and ridiculous movie moment. It's just sad. The climax of a superhero movie, the one thing that even very bad hero movies can sometimes get somewhat right, they swung and completely missed by a freaking mile. All of these heroes on call and up and away's idea of a dramatic ending is this Scott kid putting on his best Ronaldo impression? At some point, you have to question why Disney Channel would even make a movie like this at all, when the budget clearly didn't support anything close to engaging. But as is, this movie gives a new meaning to the word bad. It's pointless, lifeless, incoherent in way too many areas, wastes every shred of potential it had, and can't even get basic superhero elements correct. This movie is so bad it made me question how much I really love superheroes when they can be treated so poorly in a movie as vapid as this. But then, I watched Civil War again, and remembered why I'm such a big fan of this genre. A week ago, this movie would have easily topped the list, but then, I made the even worse mistake of watching the next movie up. Why? Oh dear God, why did I watch this movie? It's just so terrible. As far as insultingly stupid goes, this movie might actually be worse than the totality of Bucket and Skinner, and that's saying something. I had to keep checking if this was a Disney Channel original movie, because it not only doesn't feel like one, it feels like a film constructed specifically by people who hate DCOMs. There is absolutely zero value in this movie. None. Nada. Nothing. It's beyond idiotic, and the only thing it proves is that yes, Disney Channel can make a worse movie about a dog than Life is Rough, and that's an accomplishment, I guess? The entire premise involves a guy who can apparently communicate with dogs. No, really, that's the major plot mechanic in this horrible movie. That's it. And it works just about as ineffectively as you'd think. And that's not even the worst part. This movie hinges on the development that our lead, Jack Morgan, essentially inherits a mansion and millions of dollars from a guy he's met only one time because apparently his dog, named Lucky, legally keeps all of the money from his will after he died and trusted this guy as Lucky's advisor? What the actual... Sorry about that. Where were we? This movie is horrible, and it gets even worse. Apparently, the 3 living relatives of Mr. Windsor, the rich guy that died, were all taken straight from Arkham Asylum because they're all psychopaths, but not nearly as psychotic as Kirk Cameron, who plays the lead character, who apparently becomes a dog when Lucky gets excited. No, I'm not kidding about that either, but I really wish I were. And what is Uncle Phil doing in this pile of garbage? What, did he owe Disney money or something? He doesn't need to be subjected to this torture. And you can tell the whole time that he knows he's in a terrible movie. In fact, this whole movie plays like someone's idea of a sick, demented joke. It's so self-hating and at some moments so terribly off-color and inappropriate, and this was on Disney Channel. And oh god, the score. It's like all of those really, really cheesy scores from old 90s movies, except 10 times more grating. I know I haven't really explained the plot yet, but it's pretty stupid. Some douchebag inherits millions through inconceivably stupid legal nonsense, spends it on a dog, becomes the dog at random points. Dumb, selfish living relatives are dumb, selfish, and creepy, and disturbed in so many ways, and everyone lives happily ever after. That's literally it, and they somehow found a way to make every moment, every scene in this movie more unbearable than the last moment or scene that came before it. This movie is so horrid, so unapologetically broken and brain-dead, that it hurts to call it a DCOM, because the same channel that made this masterpiece greenlit this abomination. Not every DCOM has a brain, but even the worst DCOMs at least have some heart, or failing that, some semblance of a soul, which is part of why I love DCOM so much as an art form. But this movie has neither, and quite frankly, it scares me that anyone working for Disney Channel actually thought making this was a good idea, even though it was many years ago. I make a point to not utilize overly strong language on this channel, but I need to pull out a slightly more accurate description for this torture, so please, bear with me. This movie is crap. Pure crap. It's dog crap and human crap mixed together to form a unique and somehow even worse form of film fecal matter. Never, ever, ever watch this movie if you want to keep your brain cells intact, because Lord knows I lost a few. I'm running out of ways to call this movie bad, so I'll just cap this by saying, this crap is number 1, so the list is finally done. In closing, DCOMs can be a very beautiful thing. They can make us laugh, make us cry, give proper weight to world issues, and inspire us to think and feel in unique ways that we never thought we could. But, at the very bottom, are films that are poorly thought out, horribly constructed, and embarrassingly bad. But if that's the price for films like The Color of Friendship or True Confessions, then I think it's a price worth paying. The worst DCOMs can never take away from what the very best ones accomplished, and I think that's very important to note. I know that based on some of my previous videos, that many of you would have expected Twitches to make the list somewhere, but it actually didn't make the cut, surprising even me to an extent. Oh, don't get me wrong, it's a bad movie, but in the grand scheme of things, it's nowhere near as offensive as the movies that made this list. But we'll get into all the details soon enough, a few videos from now. And as always, let me know what you thought of the list. Was it too harsh? Was it spot on? And what movies would you have placed in the top 5? But, as is the standard here, let's avoid any potential flame wars. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and throw it on a like, subscribe for more, and share the list with any fellow DCOM appreciators. And don't forget to follow the Disney Brain on Facebook and Twitter for updates, links down below. The coming days will bring a surprise DCOM review, courtesy of our Civilized War sub-winner, and then the next Girl Meets World review before I finally explain my perspective on Twitches. So, lots to look forward to. Until then...
Mr. Windsor decided to leave his entire estate to the only one he knew possessed enough heart and spirit to enjoy the money properly. His dog.